In Venezuela, the Supreme Court of Justice unobjectively certified the results of the presidential election of July 28th, presented by the National Electoral Council. In the United States, Kamala Harris officially accepted the Democratic Party's nomination for President of the United States with a worrisome economic outlook behind her. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that some Pacific islands face annihilation due to climate-induced cyclones, ocean waves, and rising sea levels during his visit to Samoa. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. In Venezuela, the Supreme Court of Justice unobjectively certified the results of the presidential election of July 28th, presented by the National Electoral Council. Let's see the details.
During a solemn session in the premises of the country's highest court, the President of the Supreme Court of Justice, Caricila Rodriguez, validated the results of the presidential elections, which granted victory to Nicolás Maduro Moros as re-elected President of Venezuela for the 2025-2031 term.
I hereby certify in an unobjectionable manner the electoral material and validate the results of the presidential election of July 28, 2024, issued by the National Electoral Council, in which Nicolás Maduro was elected as President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for the constitutional period 2025 to 2031. It is so decided.
In addition, the magistrate of the Supreme Court of Justice also stated that the expert analysis of the tally sheets coincided with the machines in the totalization room.
Based on the results obtained in the expertise process, we can conclude that the bulletins issued by the National Electoral Council regarding the 2024 presidential election are supported by the tally sheets issued by each of the voting machines deployed in the electoral process, and, likewise, these tally sheets maintain full coincidence with the records of the databases of the national totalization centers.
Consequently, the President of the Judiciary urged the National Electoral Council to publish the final results of the electoral process of last July 28, in accordance with the provisions of the electoral law.
The National Electoral Council is urged to publish the final results of the electoral process, held on July 28, 2024, for the election of the President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in the Electoral Gazette of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, as provided in Article 155 of the Organic Law of Electoral Processes.
Likewise, the President of the Supreme Court of Justice informed that the former presidential candidates of the ultra-right, Edmundo González, did not comply with the call made by the Electoral Chamber of the Supreme Court of Justice and did not submit the electoral material requested.
That the former candidate Edmundo González Urrutia did not attend any of the phases of this process, to which he was summoned, and therefore, he did not comply with the order of this, the highest instance of the contentious electoral jurisdiction of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, nor with the consignment of the tally sheets, the list of witnesses, nor any electoral material. Consequently, he disregarded the mandate in frank and respect to the judicial authority.
In this context, the Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, highlighted the importance of the work of the Supreme Court of Justice in the fulfillment of justice for the defense of democracy.
The Electoral Chamber of the Supreme Court of Justice has issued a truly transcendental and historical ruling for the country. I also consider as Attorney General of the Republic that the same is a mandatory compliance in all its parts. It validates the results issued by the only existing electoral power in the country, which is the National Electoral Council in the terms already known.
For his part, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Venezuela, Iván Gil, demanded the international community to stop foreign interference in the internal affairs of the Venezuelan people.
Today it is clear, the whole process is well written, how the details of the electoral process were carried out, the competences of the Supreme Court of Justice, its electoral chamber and the competences of the National Electoral Council, and it is very important for the world to know that in Venezuela the constitution of the Bolivarian Republic has triumphed, the rule of law has triumphed, its institutions have triumphed. And once again, in Venezuela, we demand respect. We demand non-interference in internal Venezuelan affairs, which, as you have been able to see live and direct on television, are matters that have a solution within the framework of our Constitution.
With this final ruling, the Supreme Court of Justice ratified the victory of the re-elected president, Nicolás Maduro, in the election of July 28, after the campaign promoted by the extreme right wing that sought to disregard the powers of the Venezuelan state and to implant an alleged matrix of fraud, while through social networks they incited fascist actions.
In this context, the President Nicolás Maduro urged to maintain respect for the public powers after the Supreme Court of Justice ratified his victory in the presidential elections. During a meeting with the people of the state of La Guaira, the President congratulated the Supreme Court of Justice for its technical and legal work in the electoral legislation in defense of democracy. Likewise, the National Executive expressed that in view of the attempts to generate violence by the Venezuelan extreme right wing and its U.S. allies, dialogue is the only way for peace to prevail. Now let's take a short break. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, the current Vice President Kamala Harris formally accepted the candidacy for the Democratic Party for president of the country. Harris, who replaced Biden, accepted the nomination and pledged to take advantage of the precious opportunity the country has to leave bitterness and cynicism behind. Harris has been harshly criticized even by her supporters for the economic program on August 16th, further deepening concerns about the economy's performance in the Democratic term. Gaza and immigration were the most reserved issues at the Democratic National Convention.
Our nation with this election has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans.
And on Thursday, Donald Trump, the far-right candidate seeking his second term as the U.S. president, promised to approve the death penalty for undocumented immigrants for certain crimes. A few meters from the border of the country with Mexico and accompanied by the parents of a little girl allegedly murdered by two undocumented immigrants, the Republican criticized his Democrat contender Kamala Harris. Questioning her commitment to the nation, Trump assured that he would take care of the territory by promising capital punishment for undocumented foreigners who traffic drugs or are linked to drug trafficking, and for those who commit lethal violence against children and state officials. And in other news, the National Human Rights Commission of Mexico ratified its support for the judicial reform. On the same day, the president-elect Claudia Sheinbaum responded to the statements of the U.S. ambassador. The Commission reaffirms that the proposal to transform them into the Ombudsman's office is a fundamental part of the strengthening of the defense and protection of guarantees. In this way, it replied to the National Action Party, which proposed to elect by popular vote. They consider the idea as opportunistic because since January 2023, the project was filed. On the other hand, Claudia Sheinbaum answered to the statements of the U.S. ambassador to Mexico, Ken Salazar, who asserted that the reform is a risk for Mexican democracy and reminded him that in his country, judges are elected by the states and that Mexico is a sovereign country. And in Argentina, near midnight on Thursday, the office of the presidency officially communicated that the president, Javier Milei, will veto the retirement reform approved by the Senate. According to the statement, the libertarian head of state takes the decision due to the intention of the Senate to, quote unquote, to destroy the government's economic program. He also described the legislative exercise as an act of demagogic populism and added the particular accounts of the president, who is also an economist. On Thursday, with the overwhelming majority of 61 votes in favor and 8 against, the upper house passed into law a pension reform which, among other aspects, established a monthly update based on the latest available data of the Consumer Price Index. And solidarity with the Palestinian people was felt in Ecuador this Thursday. Hundreds of people raised their voices to demand a stop to the genocide that is being perpetrated by Israel. From Quito, our correspondent Elena Rodriguez with the details.
A multitude walked through the central streets of the Ecuadorian capital in support of the Palestinian people.
Ecuador stands in solidarity with Palestine. We also want to make this public denunciation of the genocide that has been going on for almost a year now, before the eyes of the whole world, that the peoples of the global south are also with the Palestinian people and that their struggle is also our struggle.
It is unjust and unacceptable that there is a genocide of such proportions that Israel should ignore international bodies and international treaties.
Hundreds of people walked from Arbolito Park to the Israeli embassy to express their repudiation of what they described as genocide.
This is genocide. It is ethnic cleansing. This is not war. They are not fighting against Hamas. They are exterminating the Palestinian people. It cannot be that the world is indifferent to this genocide.
Ecuadorians in solidarity with Palestine denounced that there is a media siege that seeks to hide what is happening in Gaza.
It is something we can no longer put up with. So much complicity, so much lukewarmness in media in general, because of the situation with Palestine.
They also described the president of Ecuador, Daniel Noboa, as an accomplice of the tragedy that is affecting the people of that part of the world.
The government is not interested, and we are very ashamed, very embarrassed, that the Noboa government is in favor of this genocide.
The Ecuador-Palestine Unitary Solidarity Committee announced that, at the Latin American level, mobilizations are being prepared in rejection of the crimes committed by the Israeli occupiers on the one-year anniversary of the siege.
Con imágenes de Henry Pillajo, Elena Rodriguez, teleSUR Ecuador.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you will be able to re-watch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. welcome back from the south. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that some Pacific islands face annihilation due to climate-induced cyclones, ocean waves, and rising sea levels during his visit to Samoa. He emphasized the urgent need to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, a target agreed upon by nearly 200 nations in the 2015 Paris Agreement. Guterres highlighted that the Pacific contributes only 0.02% of global carbon emissions, but suffers disproportionately from climate impacts. He urged wealthier nations to fulfill their financial commitments to developing countries and called for international action against climate change, overfishing, and plastic pollution. He asserted that the Pacific should be managed by its islanders and not become a site for geopolitical competition.
During my visit, I've spent time with communities threatened by the rising ocean. Rising sea levels pose an enormous threat to Samoa, to the Pacific, and to other small island developing states. And these challenges demand resolute international action. The climate crisis is the gravest threat facing this country and this region, and quite possibly the world. This region, the Pacific, contributes 0.02% of global emissions. Yet, you are on the front lines of the climate crisis, dealing with extreme weather events from raging tropical cyclones to record ocean heat waves. Sea levels are rising even faster than the global average, posing an existential threat to millions of Pacific islanders.
And now we move on to other topics. One of the most performed classics by ballet companies in the world is Judicial, the most performed by the prima ballerina absoluta, the Cuban Alicia Alonso. Let's see.
Judicial is the absolute masterpiece of the dance theater of Romanticism. It was premiered in 1841 at the Opera of Paris, becoming a fundamental work of the classical dance. The story centers on a beautiful, pure and innocent young woman who falls in love with Albrecht, who is a nobleman already engaged to be married and who, in order to win her, pretends to be a simple villager. Hilarion, who, for his part, is deeply in love with Giselle, suspects the deception and unmasks it. Giselle's innocence is shattered, driving her to madness and death. The argument was based on an idea of Théophile Gautier, French poet, critic and novelist, a faithful defender of the Romantic movement. In a book by Heinrich Heine entitled From Germany, Gautier read about the White Willies, who according to him are figures dancing precisely in the moon-softened mist of Germany. From this idea the author began to write the ballet, but when he did not advance in its development, he turned to Jules Henry Verneuil, French dramatist. One of the top roles of romantic ballet in the romantic category, it has known interpretations that have celebrated to great prima donnas and prima ballerinas of the 20th century. Among them are the Russians Olga Spresizdeva, Anna Pavlova, Olga Preobrazheskaya, Tamara Karsavina, the Italian Carla Fracci, and the Cuban Alicia Alonso.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.